My name is Alanah Kazlauskas. Helen, Hasan and I thank you for joining me. In this talk, I explore the organisation of anti-doping work through the analytical lens of the Cynefin framework. Doping in sport has a history that goes back to the first Olympiad. It's a problem that keeps changing, not only as new ways of doping are developed, but also as new ways of addressing the problem are put forward. Each solution represents acknowledgement of and response to a new aspect of the doping problem, adding to the multiple contexts and dense web of relationships associated with anti-doping work. These attributes allow doping in sport to be described as a wicked problem. Anti-doping work now involves hundreds of sporting bodies, expert professionals, national governments, as well as athletes, their entourages, and other concerned individuals. To make sense of complex contexts such as this, we need to see things differently, with new eyes. The Cynefin framework, developed by Snowden and Kurtz, provides a lens with which to do this. With its roots in the complexity theory of the physical sciences and the field of knowledge management, the Cynefin framework promotes sense-making at both the meta level as well as within particular situations. The Cynefin framework focuses on a context, order and visibility. Order is concerned with the cause-effect relationship, whilst visibility relates to the public perception of that order. Context, therefore, can be described as visibly ordered, visibly unordered, invisibly unordered, and invisibly ordered. These combinations of order and visibility generate Cynefin's knowledge domains: simple, chaos, complex, and complicated. In the simple domain, the cause and effect relationship is well known and understood. There is public visible order. Problems are solved routinely with the best practiced standard operating procedure approaches of structured bureaucracies with strong central leadership. Managers sense, categorise and respond. In the chaos domain, there is no relationship between cause and effect. There is a perception of crisis, of the need for quick, decisive action to staunch the bleeding. Managers take charge of the crisis, they act, sense and respond. In the complex domain, experts investigate the unorder, experimenting to retrospectively uncover the relationship between effect and cause. Out of public view, small networks of highly knowledgeable individuals probe, sense, and then respond to evolving problems. The links to a central leadership are weak. Knowledge of the underlying cause and effect relationship is transferred to the complicated domain. However, the relationship is difficult to understand. The experts who work in the complicated domain sense, analyse and respond to the problems that come their way based on their understanding of the cause and effect relationship. There are strong links between the experts themselves as well as between these experts and the central leadership of this domain. For this domain is where further publicly invisible investigation by expert communities develops the repeatable, robust and validated techniques that will in future enable problem contexts to be addressed in the simple domain. There are natural movements between the knowledge domains, and these movements operate in both the clockwise and anti-clockwise directions. There is clockwise movement as new knowledge is generated, tested and stabilised, and anti-clockwise movement as knowledge becomes obsolete or forgotten. Curiosity and new challenges also produce anti-clockwise movement. The fifth central domain is the domain of disorder. It is the destructive state of knowing we do not know, of not knowing how to proceed, of not knowing which knowledge domain to work in. A situation in this domain can act as a trigger for a new type of response. The variety in real-world organisations can challenge our frameworks for understanding them. The Cynefin framework allows us to make better sense of the contexts of organisation and what's happening in them by making the invisible visible, thereby giving us new perspectives on these 21st century dynamic workspaces. We now turn to using the Cynefin framework to gain insights into the organisation of anti-doping work. During the late 19th, early and mid-20th centuries, sport seemed unable to address the doping scandals that they were plagued with. Newspaper headlines screamed about doping scandals and portrayed doping in sport as being out of control. This positioned anti-doping work in a state of crisis, in the chaos domain. Reports of athlete sanctions and the prosecution of others involved in doping also impact on the public perception of anti-doping work. In contrast, they generate a perception that anti-doping work is effectively and routinely addressing and controlling doping sport. This situates anti-doping work in the simple domain. Our examination of anti-doping work recognises that this work contains multiple strategies and that these strategies have evolved over time. Using the lens of the Cynefin framework, we also look to the publicly invisible work of the experts involved in developing these strategies. For example, an effective regulatory framework relies on sports law experts to close loopholes and to uncover ways of addressing situations never imagined when the legal framework was first devised. The acceptance of indirect evidence, such as blood parameters, as an indicator of the abuse of erythropoietin, or EPO, rather than the presence of the compound itself, is an example of this. Robust, reliable scientific detection methods have expanded and changed as a response to the increased diversity of doping methods. This expansion relies on experts to improve detection levels or to develop techniques for completely different sorts of doping agents and methods, the peptide hormones, for example. Other aspects of anti-doping work also have workspaces which are publicly invisible. Implementing and harmonising global testing and education programs in the culturally diverse international sporting community has required expert diplomacy and expert technical skills. Prosecuting those involved in organised doping and the trafficking of doping substances and methods is the work of expert investigators. Uncovering the underlying factors that lead to doping behaviour by athletes is similarly behind-the-scenes expert work, this time involving research by social scientists. Viewing anti-doping work in sport with the Cynefin framework not only gives a sense of the challenges posed by this dynamic context, but also suggests how the disorder of not knowing how to proceed can be addressed either by choosing the best strategy and domain to tackle a problem situation, or by expanding the set of strategies to address a newly evolved aspect of the problem. Doping in sport can be viewed as a wicked problem. The purpose of anti-doping work is to solve that wicked problem. As a sense-making framework, the Cynefin lens enables new perspectives on the organisation of this dynamic, multifaceted work context by allowing us to see more clearly the dynamic and evolving nature of the context, the different types of knowledge work, both visible and invisible, in which groups of anti-doping workers actively engage, and the need for variety in stakeholders thinking about the context, variety for strategies, for organisational management models and approaches to decision-making. These new perspectives enable organisations, stakeholders and the public to engage with the problem and each other differently. We hope that you found our presentation interesting. Please contact us if you have any questions.